Hi everyone, welcome to Reflections of a Former Practice in Sangoma. And today I wanted us to talk about a very sensitive subject regarding sexual orientation. Why is it that some initiates come out of initiation of being a Sangoma, and when they come out having a different sexual orientation to the one that they had when they went in? Your immediate concern and your immediate question would be, what is it that could have happened during the process of initiation that then made this person to change their preference, right? Because you would have known this person. This person would have been your friend. This person would have been your family member. This person would have been somebody that you would have known previously. And when they come out of initiation, they come out having a different sexual orientation. And it makes no sense, right? And what the spiritual leaders or the Gobelas will tell you is that the person amalgamated with an ancestor or idlozi that is of a different sex. So if I am female and I went into initiation, I then amalgamated with a male spirit. And therefore, now when I come out as a Sangoma, I have a different preference because now the dominant spirit is that of the Idlozi, who is of a different sex or he's different. So he would be male and I would be female. And that would be the explanation that would be given, is that the person's sexual orientation has now changed as a result of them amalgamating with a spirit that is of a different sex or a different gender, right? And on the face of it, the argument actually makes sense. Like, it makes sense that this person would have amalgamated with a spirit that is of a different gender, and therefore now they are emitting signs of a different sexual orientation or preference based on the gender of the spirit that has now amalgamated to them. Okay, so on the face of it, it makes absolute sense. But I'm gonna draw you back to, let's talk about African culture, right? If you speak to any elder of any African family, right, the great aunts, the great grandfathers, and all of those people, the thing that plagued African communities was what? Was that men would have wives outside of their marriage or concubines outside of their marriage, and they would have children outside of their marriage. The thing that was condoned in African culture is polygamy, right? There was never, ever, ever a time in history in any African culture where same-sex preferences was something that was condoned or practiced. You can speak to any African scholar. This is not something that ever existed in African culture. So now, if this is not something that was ever practiced, that was ever condoned, that was not even an open secret, because in some families, this is an open secret where we know that the great-grandfather had children outside of the marriage and everybody knew, but it was a secret. If this is something that was never practiced in African culture, why is it now that when your ancestor is presenting themselves to either you or your family member, they would now want them to deviate or practice something that was never practiced in culture ever before? Why would that happen? That argument does not follow. It doesn't follow that in African culture, this is something that never existed. This is something that was never condoned. This is something that was never practiced. But yet now, when this person is now being initiated to be a healer, they are also now introducing practices that were never part of the family history ever at any point. It doesn't make sense, nor does it follow. You cannot conclude that something that was never done is now being introduced to this person who is supposedly supposed to be a healer, who is supposedly supposed to be a link between the living and the people who have passed. And this person is now practicing a practice that has never been engaged in ever before. So the argument of idlozi being the reason why a person would present to have a different sexual orientation after the person has initiated to be a healer cannot be accepted, nor does it follow, nor does it make sense. Right? The second argument that I would present would be, if this is God, because this is what Sangomas are told. Sangomas are told that God is calling you, God is using your ancestors to direct you, to show you what it is that you're supposed to do as far as healing is concerned. Okay. If that is God, and all the reference points that we have of God is that God does not want you to have a same-sex preference. Right? This is something that is prolific throughout the Bible. The Bible speaks about fleeing from sexual immorality. God did a crazy thing and burned down an entire city because of same-sex attraction. Not only that, but because people were actually acting on their sexual preferences. He burned down an entire city. So if this is God calling you to be a healer, in the process of God training you to become a healer, God then tells you to do something that he directly is against. Not implied. This is not implied. This is very straightforward in the Bible. God is against this. He burned down an entire city. I'm talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. He burned down an entire city, right? Paul goes on and on and on about fleeing from sexual immorality, choosing a wife, making sure that you stay with the wife that you choose. If you get a divorce, it is better for you to stay alone. This is what the Bible says, right? However, in your process of being initiated to become a healer, somehow God is going to deviate from all of that and allow you to now start practicing something that he says he's directly against. That cannot make sense. That does not follow. So then it brings you back to the question of, what is it that is causing some of the Sangomas, not all, but some of the initiates to come out and have a same-sex preference after they've initiated? And the only logical explanation that I can give you is because of what is happening during the process of initiation. Okay. And off the bat, I'm going to tell you that it's not all of the spiritual leaders that are doing it, but it's most of them. Right? When I was initiating to become a Sangoma, I initiated alone. So I was alone throughout the entire process. The entire time that I was initiating, there were no other initiates with me. It was just myself. But one day in the evening, it was around 6 or 7, a boy comes into the yard of the spiritual leader, because I was living at the home of the spiritual leader. The boy comes into the yard, he's babbling, right? He's talking, he's saying things, and we don't understand what it is that he's saying initially, right? So my spiritual leader sits him down, gives him food. We give him a second so that he can then calm down. Once he's calm, he starts then talking about he ran away from his spiritual leader. The reason why he ran away is because the spiritual leader was trying to engage in intimate contact with him. And when he refused, the spiritual leader started hitting him. Right? So him and I are both initiates. So I guess he felt a little bit more comfortable with revealing the details of what was happening to me more than he did with my Gobela. So when my Gobela left, or spiritual leader left, he then starts explaining to me what was happening. He says that initially he started having dreams about him being engaging in intimate acts with his spiritual leader. And initially he ignored the dreams. He didn't act on it. He didn't even tell the spiritual leader. However, so when you are initiating, what happens is that every single morning you are supposed to report your dreams to your spiritual leader so that your spiritual leader knows what to do next. Okay. So the spiritual leader would then come in the morning asking him, what did you see? What did you dream? And he couldn't report about what it is that he's dreaming. But eventually he did. And the explanation that was offered to him by his spiritual leader is that this is a directive directly from Amadlozi. And in order for him to receive whatever gift he's supposed to receive, he is then supposed to be intimate with the spiritual leader. But this is when he then decided that it would be best for him to run away. What was subsequently done was my spiritual leader then took him home and explained the situation to his family, right? And after that, I don't know what transpired. But this is something that happens to a lot of people. It happens to a lot of initiates are traumatized when they are initiating. Sometimes it's not to the point of um, it being a essay, you know. Sometimes it's to the point where a person is made to be a slave in that home, where a person is literally the maid servant, the cook, the cleaner, the everything of that home. And it doesn't stop there. It continues to financial abuse. I know of some initiates where the Gobela took their bank card or took their social assistance card and was withdrawing the money for themselves. So abuse in this space, like I'm saying, is very prevalent. It is something that is happening, and the argument or the reasoning or the explanation that would be provided is this is what was done to us, so we are now going to do it to you, right? That is why when people come out of initiation, there is a change in character, there is a change in how they are or how they behave, and you would dismiss it for because this person is now initiated to being a healer. I It makes sense that there would be a character change, but sometimes the changes in character are a direct result of abuse that they suffered while they were initiating. I mean, the process itself is gruesome, right? It strips you down. It is designed to strip you down of everything, from waking up in the early hours of the morning to bathing outside to sleeping on the ground, um, you know, and all of the time you're also drinking herbs. You are learning how to amalgamate yourself to these spirits. It is not an easy process. So this is a cautionary tale to those of you who are maybe being called and you are contemplating on going or undergoing the process. To those of you who have started to undergo the process but have not completed, it is not worth your while, right? It is not worth your while. I want you to think of what I had said in the beginning, right? Certain practices are things that you know for a fact was never happening in your family. You know for a fact that same-sex attraction was not something that was ever condoned or ever occurred in your family. So it would not follow that it would now be expected of you in honoring your ancestors to take up a practice that was never something that even the person that you are said to have amalgamated to would have practiced. Okay. Again, you know, my perspective is that this is not your ancestors. These are evil spirits, and therefore the only way they would condone or this pervertedness is that if it's not your ancestors and it's not your grandfather and it's not God, because it cannot be God, because God is completely against this, it can only be one entity. It can only be an evil perversion of the truth, right? It is not worth your while for you to initiate. It is not worth your while. You are not going to be healing people. You are also not being told the truth about what it is that you are going to do. You will suffer. Ultimately, you're going to suffer. You suffer in the beginning, you suffer during the process, and you suffer at the end of it all. And ultimately, if you do not repent, if you do not turn away from it, if you do not renounce it or reject it, ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to die, and then you're going to find out that in fact these people were telling the truth. All right. So yes, there is people that would come out of being initiated and they would have a same-sex preference, and sometimes it's a result of the abuse that they had suffered at the hands of the spiritual leader or the Gobela. Sometimes it's a perversion of an invasion of the evil spirit that has now amalgamated with this person, to the point where the person now would have an orientation that is not necessarily theirs, and also not something that they would have done under normal circumstances, right? Um, on this particular point, I would like us to exercise a level of compassion to initiates, to sangomas, because I know the prevalent thing to do in society is to call them witches and all of these things. But what I want you to understand about these people more than anything else is that they are demonically possessed, okay? And attacking them is not the way for you to convert them, nor is it a way for you to show them the way, right? Um, you need to exercise compassion, especially if you're trying to engage a person and trying to divert them away from engaging in the practice, or trying to get them to denounce and reject the practice of being a Sangoma. You need to exercise compassion, because you do not know what this person went through. Because the other thing that you are constantly told when you are initiating is that everything is a secret. It's a secret. You do not discuss the things that happen here. You don't discuss them with your family members. Even if your family members come to visit you, you do not discuss what it is that we are doing here. So even if you are going to visit a family member, say for instance, who is initiating, this family member is not going to disclose that they're suffering abuse. Why? Because they are told that this is a secret. This is not something that is discussed, which sounds like what? It sounds like grooming. It sounds like the person is being groomed for further abuse, right? So I want you to exercise compassion when you are approaching people, when you are trying to convert a person or you're trying to show them a better option. Please exercise compassion. Do not always come at them rebuking them, because you do not know what the person suffered at the hands of the Gobela or the spiritual leader, that they have now come to a point where they accept this to be who they are. And them accepting this to be who they are is also a way or a manner of them to cope with the abuse. So my advice, and I think the purpose of this video, is, can we be a little bit more compassionate when we are dealing with people who are either sangomas, or people who are intending on initiating, or people who want to come out, especially people who have already initiated. Let's exercise a level of compassion. I get that we need to rebuke the evil spirit. I get that we need to renounce and reject the evil spirit, but also you need to remember that you're dealing with a human being who has suffered abuse. And you need to relate to the person, first of all, on a human level, before you can even try and have a spiritual discussion with them. Try to embrace them on a level of humanity. Okay. All right, I'm gonna leave it here for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, please subscribe, please send your questions and your comments. And I'm going to say thank you and see you next time.